I'm going to tell you this exactly as it happened, the way it still sits in my chest like a bruise that refuses to fade. If you were here beside me, legs tucked under you, nursing a glass of wine while you waited for me to finally admit the truth, I'd probably talk the same way I'm talking now. Quietly. Carefully. Like confessing something dangerous to someone I trust just enough. My name is Lena Hartwell, and I never meant to become the kind of woman who keeps two different versions of herself alive at the same time. The one I introduced to the world, polished, loyal, predictable, and the one who lived in the cracks, brittle and starving for something she couldn't name out loud without breaking. If I had to pinpoint when my life first started coming apart at the seams, I'd say it was last winter. The kind of winter where the sky looks like damp concrete and the sea near our town turns the color of dirty steel. My marriage to Ethan had been in a slow freefall for months. Nothing dramatic, no screaming matches, no slammed doors. Just a thickening quiet. A distance that stretched inch by inch until I couldn't remember the last time his eyes had rested on my face like it meant something. He worked in finance, which meant he was always leaving before sunrise, returning after sunset. Even on weekends his phone vibrated relentlessly like a third heartbeat. Every time I asked if we could take a trip, have a weekend just for us, even just sit on the damn couch without multitasking, he told me he was exhausted. That things were crazy at the office. That he needed me to be patient. I was patient. For too long. But I didn't realize how empty I had become until the night I stepped into the red room. It wasn't actually red, not fully, just washed in warm neon that bled across the walls in shades of maroon, gold, and tangerine. A Havana-inspired speakeasy tucked beneath the Avalon Hotel. I had been hired as a consultant for the hotel's event expansion, lighting, acoustic flow, guest experience design, all the things I specialized in. The Red Room was their prized project, the place they wanted to become iconic. Seductive. Addictive. I stepped inside that first night expecting to make notes about wall textures and bar placement. Instead, I inhaled the smoky sweetness of rum and citrus, heard the lazy sway of a live quintet warming up on the small stage, and felt something inside me shift. It felt like stepping into someone else's life. Someone braver. Someone freer. Someone who wasn't waiting for her husband to remember she existed. And then I saw him. He was leaning over the glossy baby grand piano near the stage, adjusting the mic and testing a few soft chords. Dark hair. Rolled up sleeves. Fingers that moved with the kind of ease that comes from a lifetime of playing. His presence pulled the air toward him without trying. He looked up just as I stepped toward the stage. And I swear, just for a second, the world tilted. His eyes were a strange shade of deep green, warm and curious, like he was cataloging who I was before I even spoke. "You must be the lighting consultant," he said, not with arrogance but with a quiet certainty. I told him my name. He told me his. Julian Cross. The Red Room's new resident pianist and vocalist. His smile was small but disarming, like he was used to people telling him secrets they didn't mean to share. And maybe I started to do exactly that, without realizing, in the way I let him ask questions no stranger should be allowed to ask. Why lighting? Why Havana aesthetics? Why late night work, night after night? Who was waiting for me at home? I gave half answers. He listened like they were whole ones. I should have walked away the second I felt that subtle pull, but I didn't. Because for the first time in months, years, maybe, someone actually saw me. Not the version of me who hosted fundraisers and designed mood boards and paid bills and folded Ethan's dry-cleaned shirts. The version of me who still wanted something. The second crack came a week later, during the Red Room's first official rehearsal night. The lounge was glowing, teal velvet sofas, warm neon signs casting smoke-softened halos over the bar, musicians tuning their instruments, crystals in the chandeliers catching the light like droplets. I was adjusting a dimmer panel when Julian walked up behind me. "You always work this late?" he asked softly. I didn't turn. Someone has to make sure the room seduces people. "Maybe the room isn't the only thing doing that," he murmured. For a moment, silence bloomed between us. Heavy. Charged. I turned then, slowly, and found him closer than he should have been. Not touching me, but near enough that the air felt different. "I'm married," I said. It wasn't a warning. It was a confession. He looked at my left hand, at the ring that still fit but no longer felt like it belonged. "I know," he said. "That doesn't mean you're loved." My breath caught. I wanted to tell him he was wrong. That Ethan did love me. That the man who forgot anniversaries and canceled date nights still cared. That he was just stressed, tired, overwhelmed. But lies don't form easily when someone is looking directly into your hurt. The moment broke when the stage manager called his name, and Julian stepped back with a nod. But something had already shifted. I started leaving the hotel later each night. Some nights Julian lingered to help me lower lights or test sounds scattering off the walls. Some nights he played soft, private notes on the piano while I walked through the room making notes in my tablet. And some nights, we didn't talk about the room at all. We talked about music. Childhood. Fear. Dreams. Loneliness. Not with flirtation. With truth. And truth, I've learned, is the most dangerous form of intimacy. The third crack came when I found the message on Ethan's phone. It wasn't a sext. It wasn't a romantic confession. It was worse. "I miss talking to you. Tonight felt right." From someone named Marissa. He had left his phone unlocked on the counter while he showered. I wasn't snooping. I just wanted to check the time. The words punched the air out of my lungs. He didn't kiss me anymore. He didn't talk to me anymore. He didn't choose me anymore. And yet he had found time, energy, to give that to someone else. When he came out of the shower, I didn't mention the message. I couldn't. My voice felt like a torn wire sparking inside my throat. I told him dinner was in the fridge. He kissed my cheek lightly, an absent, mechanical gesture, and went to bed early. I stood in the kitchen alone for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just folded. And when I finally picked myself up off the metaphorical floor, the only place I wanted to go wasn't home anymore. It was the Red Room. Or maybe it was Julian. I still don't know which. The night the first real fracture happened, the lounge was dark except for a single amber lamp near the bar. Rehearsal had ended. Staff had left. The musicians were packing up their cases, the soft clinks and snaps echoing through the dim room. Julian was still at the piano, playing something slow and aching. Something that crawled under my ribs and settled there like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. I walked toward him before I realized my feet were moving. He stopped playing when he saw me. "You look like someone who needs to sit," he said gently. So I sat. He asked what was wrong. And for the first time since the message on Ethan's phone, the truth slipped out of me like a wound opening. "I think my husband is in love with someone else." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was devastating. He closed the piano lid softly, as if sealing something inside. Then he said, "I'm sorry." And those two simple words broke me. Not because of what he said. Because of how he said it. With sincerity. With softness. With pain, as if he felt it with me. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I laughed. Quiet, brittle laughter. "Isn't it funny?" I whispered. I walked around believing I was safe. That nothing could break us because we never fought. As if silence is strength. He studied my face for a long moment. Then he said something I will never forget. "Silence isn't strength, Lena. It's surrender." That's when the tears came. Slow at first. Then unstoppable. I tried to hide my face, but he reached out, hesitant, gentle, and touched my arm. A simple touch. But it unraveled me. I fell forward, not into him, not physically, but into the space between what I wanted and what I feared. He didn't pull me closer. He didn't take advantage. He just stayed. Fully present. Fully human. And sometimes presence hurts more than absence. When I finally wiped my face and stood, he stood too. The air between us tightened, thickened, hummed with something unspoken but undeniable. He whispered, "You deserve more." I whispered back, "I don't know what I deserve." We didn't kiss. Not that night. But the room felt like we had. The lounge glowed around us, warm neon shimmering through smoky air like the inside of a secret confession. I left before anything else happened. But something inside me stayed behind, curled up on that piano bench, waiting. I didn't know then that the next night would take everything further. I didn't know that Ethan's betrayal was only the first fracture. Or that Julian had a secret of his own. I didn't know that I wasn't stepping into a love story. I was stepping into a trap. But the door was already closing behind me. And I was already walking toward the man who would break me open. The next night I stood in front of my wardrobe for far too long for someone who was allegedly only going to work. It was pathetic, really. I told myself I was overthinking. That I was just going to the Red Room to supervise a VIP tasting, that any extra care I put into my hair or lipstick was purely professional, tied to brand image and client expectations. But as I slipped into the black satin dress that made my shoulders look elegant and my waist a little smaller, I knew I was doing it for one person. And it was not my husband. On the way to the hotel, the city felt unreal. Streetlights smeared across the taxi window like streaks of molten gold. The driver asked if I was going somewhere special. I said I was going to work. He made a small noise that sounded like disbelief. In the elevator of the Avalon, my heart hammered against my ribs in a way that had nothing to do with the cheap coffee I had inhaled earlier. When the doors slid open onto the lower level, the faint hum of music seeped into the hallway. Bass, piano, low horns. The Red Room alive. I stepped in, and for a moment I simply stood there, letting it wash over me. The lounge was no longer a project. It was a world. Warm neon spilled from signs over the bar, melting into the deep teal of the walls. The chandeliers glowed low, casting shadows that turned people beautiful. Smoke curled in lazy threads above crystal glasses. A woman at the bar laughed, throwing her head back. A couple in the corner leaned into each other, their faces close and private. On the small stage, bathed in amber light, Julian sat at the piano. He was playing something slow and sensual, fingers moving with effortless certainty, voice a soft murmur that slid through the room like a secret. I felt every note like a fingertip along my spine. He saw me. Of course he saw me. His gaze brushed over the crowd, then paused when it found me near the entrance. The slightest shift in his expression, a flicker in his eyes, a hitch in the rhythm of the song that no one but me would ever notice. Then he continued playing, but the air between us had changed. I did my job. I moved through the room, checked in with servers, spoke with the bar manager about pacing, nodded at the hotel director when she asked if everything was going smoothly. But underneath every conversation was a steady awareness of where he was on the stage, what he was playing, who was watching him. At one point, a woman with dark red lipstick and sharp cheekbones approached the piano and asked him for something more upbeat. He smiled, charming and distant, and accommodated her request. She lingered, flirting. He stayed polite. I told myself that my reaction was professional, that I was gauging guest engagement. I was lying to myself. Later, when the VIP group left satisfied and pleasantly drunk, staff began their closing routines. Chairs scraped softly, glasses clinked, the music faded into the background as the playlist shifted to something instrumental. The room thinned out. I ended up at the edge of the stage with a clipboard in my hand and no notes written on the page. Julian closed the piano lid gently and came down toward me. He told me that the room had felt different tonight, that the crowd had finally given in to what the space wanted them to feel. I said that meant we had done our job. He asked if I believed my only job happened inside these four walls. I did not answer. Instead, I asked how long he had been playing Cuban standards, how he had ended up here. He told me a story about a disastrous tour in South America, a broken contract, a chance meeting with a booking agent who liked the way he played boleros. He told it lightly, but underneath the words was a thread of disappointment, of dreams bent around practicalities. I found myself telling him about architecture school, about how I had once thought I would design theaters or galleries or places people would travel across the world to see. I confessed that somewhere along the way I had shrunk that dream into designing atmospheres for hotels because it paid well and sounded respectable. He listened in that full-bodied way of his. Not nodding for the sake of it, but absorbing, considering, filing pieces of me away. Staff disappeared, one by one, leaving us in a slowly emptying room. Ruth, the lounge manager, waved goodbye, calling that she was leaving us to close up. There was a teasing lilt in her voice that made heat bloom in my cheeks. When the door shut behind her, the quiet settled. The red room without people was still beautiful. More so, maybe. The lighting felt like it had been dialed down to something intimate and honest. Julian sat on a bar stool next to me, close enough that his thigh brushed mine when he shifted. That small touch sent a shock through me. He noticed. He always did. He asked quietly if I was okay after what I had told him the night before, about Ethan and the messages. I shrugged, the motion brittle. I said that I was fine. That I had rehearsed so many possible confrontations in my head that they blurred into one another. That instead of any of those honest conversations, I had done the cowardly thing and gone to work. He told me there was nothing cowardly about seeking refuge in a place I had built myself. He reminded me that this room existed because of my mind and my hands. I made some joke about him being dangerously good at saying the right thing. He studied my face for a long second, then said that he did not always say the right thing, that if he did, he would tell me to go home, talk to my husband, and never see him again. The air between us tightened like a pulled wire. I asked what he did instead. He said that instead, he wanted to ask me a question he had no right to ask. My pulse climbed. He asked when I had last felt wanted. Not appreciated. Not respected. Not relied upon. Wanted. The word landed like a weight. Memories flashed in quick succession. Ethan kissing me hungrily in the small apartment we first shared. Ethan picking me up and spinning me around when I got my first big contract. Ethan tracing the line of my spine the night before our wedding, saying nothing, just breathing with me. Then those images faded, replaced with late nights at separate ends of the sofa, the glow of his laptop on his face, the absence of his hand on my back. I realized I could not answer his question with anything recent. Silence answered for me. He lowered his gaze briefly, as if the truth hurt him too. Then he stood up and said we should test something. His tone turned lighter, but there was steel underneath, a decision already made. He walked to the lighting panel and adjusted the dimmers. The room sank into a softer darkness, the chandeliers glowing like captured sunset, the neon over the bar washing everything in a warm, reddish halo. The smoky air turned almost physical. He came back and held out his hand, not toward my body, but toward the center of the room. He said that I had designed this space for other people to feel alive in. Then he asked when I had let it do the same for me. I looked at his hand. My heart beat against my ribs like it wanted out. This was the moment. The moment decent women step back. The moment good wives say no. I took his hand. His fingers closed around mine. Warm. Firm. Not possessive. Just certain. He led me to the center of the room, between the tables, under the hanging light. Somewhere on the speakers, a slow track began to play, a soft Cuban bolero, all low percussion and lingering piano notes. He placed one hand lightly at my waist, careful, almost ceremonial, and the other still held mine. He did not pull me flush against him, not yet. He simply began to move, a slow sway, bodies barely touching. I thought of all the times I had asked Ethan to dance with me, even in our living room, and the way he had laughed, said he was terrible, said maybe later. There had never been a later. I stepped closer on the next beat. It was instinctive. His breath hitched. His fingers tightened slightly at my waist. We moved slowly, the room around us a blur of warm light and shadow. For the first time in a long time, my body felt inhabited. Not an object, not a symbol, not a compromise. Me. In skin that tingled at every point of contact. We danced like that for a long moment, suspended outside of normal time. Then I made the mistake of looking up into his eyes. They were not calm anymore. They were full of things he had not said out loud. Want and restraint and pain and something that looked dangerously like care. His gaze dropped to my mouth. My breath caught. He whispered my name, the sound low and rough, and told me that if he kissed me, there would be no going back. He told me that if I wanted him to stop, I needed to say so now. The words hung between us like a held breath. I thought about Ethan and the unspoken affair with Marissa. I thought about my own loneliness. I thought about how alive I felt in that moment, under that neon, in those arms. I did not tell him to stop. Therefore, I told him to continue. I tilted my face up. He closed the distance. The first press of his mouth against mine was careful, almost reverent. A question. A test. I answered by leaning into him, fingers curling into the fabric at his shoulder. Then the restraint broke. The kiss deepened, heat crashing through me like a wave. His hand at my waist pulled me closer, eliminating the space between our bodies. The other slid up to cradle the back of my neck, fingers threading through my hair. I tasted smoke and citrus and something uniquely him. Every part of me that had been asleep lit up at once. My mind screamed that this was wrong. My body did not care. At some point, my clipboard clattered to the floor, plastic cracking against the tiles. Neither of us broke the kiss. When we finally pulled apart, we were breathing hard, foreheads almost touching, the air between us battered and hot. This is insane, I wanted to say. Instead I said that I had not felt that awake in years. He told me he had been trying not to do that since the first week he met me. The honesty in his voice rocked me more than the kiss. The reality of what we had done crashed in then. I stepped back, hand over my mouth, eyes stinging. I said that I needed to think. He nodded, pain flickering over his features. He said he would follow my lead, that he would not push, that he would be there if I wanted him and gone if I did not. I left the red room that night feeling like I had split my life in half. The wife. The woman in the red room. I did not sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt his hands on my waist again. Every time I rolled over, I saw Ethan's outline on the other side of the bed, present and yet not there. Morning brought no clarity. Just more questions. The affair began not with a decision, but with a lack of one. I did not stand in front of a mirror and declare that I would cheat. I did not draw lines in the sand and step over them knowingly. I simply kept going to the lounge. Kept letting him walk me to my car. Kept answering his messages. Small things, each defensible on its own, each another step down a path I pretended I had not chosen. Ethan drifted even further away. There were more late nights, more vague explanations, more tired apologies that felt scripted. I never confronted him about Marissa. He never confronted me about coming home smelling faintly of tobacco and lime. We were two people sleeping in the same bed, both belonging in someone else's arms. Julian and I fell into something that looked like gravity. We stole minutes in dark corners, behind velvet curtains, in the narrow corridor leading to the storage room. Sometimes it was just a touch, his hand brushing mine as he passed me a glass, his fingers resting at the small of my back as I squeezed past him. Sometimes it was more, mouths colliding in a rushed kiss that left us both dizzy. One night, after a private event, we ended up alone in the small office behind the bar. The door clicked shut. The world stayed outside. There were no speeches. No promises. Just hands and hunger and quiet gasps swallowed into each other's mouths. If you want explicit details, you will not get them from me. What matters is not the mechanics, It is the fact that lying became easier after that. Lying to Ethan. Lying to myself. Lying to the image of who I thought I was. We built a pocket universe inside the red room, where reality was suspended and neon softened all the hard edges. Outside, there were taxes and emails and social obligations. Inside, there was music and sweat and two people trying to forget the lives they were already failing at. I told myself I was falling in love with him. Maybe I was. Maybe I was just intoxicated by how deeply he seemed to care about my thoughts, my feelings, my joy. He noticed when I got a haircut, when I wore a new lipstick, when I was tired, when a client had been particularly difficult. Once, after a disastrous call with a vendor, I walked into the lounge seething. He read it immediately in the set of my shoulders. Without asking, he sat me down, made me a drink with muddled mint and burned sugar, and told me to talk. I vented. He listened. Not once did he steer the conversation back to himself. Ethan, if I am being fair, had done that once. Years ago. Before everything blurred. I think that is what hurt most, that I had once had this with my husband and let it dissolve without even noticing. The affair with Julian did not live in opposition to my marriage. It thrived in the space my marriage had abandoned. And for a while, I let myself hide there. The twist did not come from a dramatic discovery or a forgotten phone. It came from a reservation list. One Thursday afternoon, I sat with the front desk agent, reviewing upcoming bookings for the Red Room. Names, party sizes, dietary needs. It was rote, mechanical work. I sipped lukewarm coffee while I clicked through. And then my stomach dropped. A familiar name stared back at me from the list for Saturday night. A private table for two. Booked under his full name. Ethan Hartwell. I blinked, thinking it must be someone else. It was a common surname. Maybe a coincidence. But the first name, the email address, the phone number beneath it, it was all his. Table 6. The small, semi-private booth near the back, under the warmest pool of neon, the one people requested for anniversaries and proposals. A note in the system read, special occasion. Discreet service. My heart began to pound. I asked the agent casually when the reservation had come in. She said earlier that day, online. She commented that whoever this Ethan was had paid extra for the premium cigar cart and champagne bundle. I excused myself to the staff restroom before I fainted. Cold tiles beneath my palms. The hum of the building in my ears. So he was bringing her here. To my place. To my room. The red room that I had designed, the space where I had slept with someone else, where my fingerprints were in every light fixture, on every curve of the bar. The humiliation burned hot. The irony burned hotter. My husband was cheating on me in the very room where I was cheating on him. And neither of us knew what the other was doing. That realization should have made me sick enough to end everything. To walk away from both of them. To set fire to my double life and rebuild from ash. Instead, a darker thought formed. What if I saw them? Not as a stranger. Not as a victim. As the woman who owned the room. The idea took root, poisonous and irresistible. When I told Julian about the reservation later that evening, he went very still. We were in the storage hallway, away from the cameras. He had just kissed me in passing, the kind of quick, stolen kiss that had become second nature. I handed him the printout with Ethan's name highlighted. He read each line carefully. Then his jaw clenched. He said we could cancel the reservation. He said we could claim a double booking, a system error, anything. He said I did not need to see that. I told him I did. I told him I was done imagining. I wanted the truth. All of it. The worst of it. He looked at me with something like fear. He asked what I planned to do. I said I had no plan. I would wait, watch, and decide in the moment. He did not like that answer. But he did not argue. For the first time since we had started whatever we were, I saw something in his eyes that did not match his words. Something like guilt. Something like anticipation. I chalked it up to nerves. I was wrong. Saturday arrived heavy and bright. The day dragged, full of trivial tasks that felt obscene against the backdrop of what was coming. At home, Ethan was strangely normal. He said he had a work dinner that night, a client who liked live music and rum. He suggested I could join if I wanted. The invitation was so unexpected that I almost laughed. I asked where. He said a place downtown. He did not name it. I declined. I claimed exhaustion. He seemed relieved. He shaved carefully before leaving. He wore the navy shirt I had always loved on him, the one that made his eyes look deceptively soft. He chose cologne more carefully than usual. Watching him felt like watching an actor prepare for a role. He kissed my cheek at the door. His lips were warm. It made my skin crawl. When he left, I sat on the sofa for a long minute, staring at the closed door, then stood up and got dressed myself. I did not wear black. I wore red. A deep, rich red that matched the neon glow of the lounge. I let my hair down, dark waves over my shoulders. I ran my fingertip over the pale indentation where my ring usually sat. I left the ring on the dresser. At the hotel, staff were buzzing, unaware of the small war I was about to wage with myself. I moved through pre-opening checks on autopilot. The bar gleamed. The candles were lit. The band tuned their instruments under the warm red-gold glow. Julian found me in the back hallway. He looked at the dress. He swallowed. He asked if I was sure I wanted to be there. I said yes. He asked if I wanted him to play something sharp and chaotic to ruin the atmosphere. I managed a smile. I told him to play whatever he needed to play to get through the night. He nodded, but his eyes looked wrong. Too bright. Too guarded. The doors opened. Guests streamed in. Lights dimmed. The red room inhaled and exhaled around me. Time stretched and snapped in uneven intervals until I saw him. Ethan. He walked in at 9:30. His posture was relaxed, his smile easy in a way I had not seen in years. On his arm was a woman in a fitted emerald dress, hair in loose waves, lipstick a soft rose. She was beautiful in a way that made my chest ache. Not because I was jealous of her face, but because I could see, in her eyes, the way she looked at him. Like he was worth getting dressed up for. Like he was worth her time. Like she had no idea what he really was. They did not see me. Of course they did not. I was a part of the scenery. The woman in black at the edge of the room. Except tonight I was in red. I watched as a server led them to table 6. The candles at their table flickered gently. The champagne bucket gleamed. The saxophone sign above the bar threw a wash of warm neon over them. They sat close. He leaned in when she spoke. He laughed. He touched her hand. Each small gesture was a knife. On the stage, Julian began to play. A slow, sultry melody filled the space, dipping and curling around conversations. His gaze skimmed the crowd briefly, landed on me, then on table 6, then back to me again. I expected rage. I found only hollowness. As the night progressed, the scene blurred. Drinks arrived. The cigar cart made its appearance. At one point, Ethan stood and moved behind Marissa, slipping his arms around her as she laughed. He pressed a kiss to her bare shoulder. She tilted her head toward him, eyes closing briefly. They looked happy. More than that. They looked right. The realization stunned me. I had expected to see some grotesque version of my husband, some stranger. Instead I saw the man I had fallen in love with, charming, attentive, playful. The version of him I had not seen in years. Only he was giving it to someone else. I went to the back office before I shattered in public. Julian followed, after a minute. He closed the door behind him, the muffled thrum of music seeping through the walls. He asked how I was. I said that it was strange to watch the best and worst moment of my marriage at the same time. He said he wanted to walk out there and drag Ethan from the table. I said that would be unprofessional. He said he did not care. I told him I did. For the first time, we snapped at each other. Not with work tension. With something rawer. The affair, the betrayal, the double lives pressed against each other inside that small office like gas in a sealed container. He moved toward me. I stepped back. He told me that what we had was real. I told him that so was my marriage, once. He asked which one I wanted. I had no answer. Silence stretched. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated, and said that there was something else he needed to tell me. The way he said it made the skin at the back of my neck prickle. I asked what. He hesitated. He looked at the door, then at me, then at the floor. And for the first time since I had met him, he looked like a coward. He said it could wait until after the set. Then he left. I was too rattled to follow. I stayed in the office, listening to the music and murmur of voices through the wall, until I realized the sound had changed. Raised voices. Chair scraping. A glass shattering. I rushed out. The scene at table 6 was chaos rendered in warm neon and candlelight. Marissa was on her feet, eyes wide, hand over her mouth. Ethan stood opposite her, his face drained of color, his posture tight. Beside them, a man I did not recognize had planted his hands on the table, leaning in with barely contained fury. He was older than Ethan, expensive suit, wedding ring glinting under the lights. The hotel security staff hovered nearby, uncertain. The older man spoke low and dangerous, words I could not catch over the murmur. Marissa turned toward him, pleading, reaching for his arm. Ethan raised his hand slightly, as if in surrender. It clicked then. The man was not some stranger. He was Marissa's husband. The moment of realization was ugly and electric. My husband was cheating on me with a married woman in the lounge I had designed while I cheated on him with its pianist, and her husband had chosen this place to confront them. It was almost poetic. In a sick, cinematic way. The husband's gaze swept the room and landed on me. We locked eyes for a fraction of a second. In that look was something I recognized instantly. Humiliation. Rage. Grief. Recognition of a fellow casualty. He turned away without acknowledging it. Hotel security stepped in more firmly then, murmuring about taking the conversation upstairs, away from other guests. Ethan caught sight of me at last. His expression twisted. Shock. Guilt. Something else, something like relief at being seen. Our eyes met across the room, across the beautifully lit, perfectly staged tableau of our mutual destruction. We held each other's gaze while security escorted the three of them toward the exit. He did not say my name. I did not say his. But in that silent exchange, everything that needed to be said was suddenly, horribly clear. We had both blown our life apart. Just not honestly. Not together. After they were gone, the room buzzed with speculation. Guests murmured, servers shook their heads, staff shared quick, loaded glances. I stepped behind the bar as if directing, issuing orders to comp some drinks, smooth over the disruption, keep the night going. Professionally, I succeeded. Personally, I turned to dust. When the last guest left and the lights brightened for cleanup, I felt like a ghost in my own body. Julian approached me slowly. He told me we needed to talk. I said that everyone kept saying that and no one seemed to know how. He flinched at the bite in my voice. He said that what had just happened out there would have consequences. For Ethan. For Marissa. For the hotel. For me. I said I was aware. Then I reminded him that he had said earlier there was something he needed to tell me. He closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they looked older. He said it was not the right time. I laughed, sharp and humorless. I said that the right time had passed a long time ago, and now there was only whatever this was. He looked at the empty tables, at the still smoking ashtray someone had forgotten to clear, at the stage bathed in half-light. Then he told me. He told me that he had not come to the Avalon by accident. He told me that someone had arranged for him to be there. Paid him to be there. Paid him to be in the Red Room. Paid him to be near me. He did not say who. Not yet. My heart plunged. He said that at first, he had seen it as a gig like any other. Good pay, reputable hotel, steady work. He had agreed to certain conditions. Be attentive. Be engaging. Be around when I was around. No explicit instructions beyond that. He said he told himself it was harmless. That he was just doing his job. He said he had not expected to care. Or to be cared about. He said he fell anyway. He told me all of that under the dying glow of the neon, smoke still hanging in the air between us like the residue of all the secrets we had just watched explode. I asked, with a voice that barely worked, who had hired him. He hesitated. And that hesitation told me everything I needed to know even before he spoke. In that half-second of silence, the puzzle pieces I had been ignoring shuffled into place. Ethan's sudden suggestion that I consult for the Avalon months earlier. The hotel's uncharacteristic eagerness to give me creative control. Julian's uncanny timing. The way he had asked questions specifically about my marriage from the beginning, always plausibly justified, always a little too pointed. He finally said the name. I was right. It was Ethan. My husband had paid another man to be in the place where I felt most alive. Had paid him to get close to me. Had paid him to see whether I would do exactly what I had done. And Julian had accepted. Whatever he felt now, whatever truths were tangled between us, our beginning was not organic. It was orchestrated. It was a test. And I had failed it spectacularly. The room spun. The neon blurred. I felt sick. I asked him how much of it had been real. He said all of it. I asked if the first compliment about my lighting had been scripted. He said no, that had been him. I asked if the dance under the chandeliers had been planned. He said no. I asked if someone had told him to kiss me. He said never. He said he had wanted that on his own. I believed that. And hated that I did. My knees felt weak. I sat down hard on the nearest bar stool. He knelt in front of me, not dramatic, not theatrical, just desperate. He said that somewhere between a paycheck and the first time I laughed at one of his terrible jokes, something had flipped inside him. He had stopped filing whatever mental reports he had been filing. Stopped answering Ethan's messages. Stopped updating whoever needed updates. I thought of Ethan, watching my schedule, seeing my late nights, seeing my mood change. I thought of how little he had done with that information except cheat on me back. I asked Julian when he had planned to tell me. He said tonight, before everything blew up. That the guilt had been eating him alive. He said he knew he had no right to ask for forgiveness. He said he would understand if I walked away. I told him that forgiveness was a luxury for people who still believed in clean lines. I had walked so far past that point I could barely see it. He reached for my hand. I let him take it. It would be easier if I had slapped him. Easier if I had screamed and told him to get out, to leave town, to evaporate. Instead, I sat there in the warm, smoky light of the lounge I had created, holding the hand of the man I had fallen for, knowing full well he had been placed in my life like bait. And I realized something that startled me with its clarity. Ethan had not trusted me enough to talk to me. He had trusted a stranger enough to test me. Julian had not respected me enough to refuse. And I had not respected myself enough to say no to any of it. That was the deepest betrayal. My own. Not theirs. Mine. Because at any point, I could have insisted on honesty. I could have demanded therapy, separation, confrontation. I had chosen illusion instead. The Red Room had given me a stage to act on. I had taken the role and played it. Very well. In the weeks that followed, everything fell apart and rearranged itself. The hotel discreetly banned the phrase loyalty package from internal emails. Staff were warned about external investigators. Security systems were reviewed. The Red Room stayed open, to my surprise. Scandal attracts the right kind of clientele if you spin it correctly. Ethan moved out. We did not have a screaming match. We had a meeting. Sitting at our kitchen table, we went through the list. What had happened? Who had done what first? What we wanted now. He admitted to hiring Julian. Said he had been suffocating in our silence and had not known how to talk to me. Said he had wanted proof that he was not just making up the distance he felt. Said he had needed permission to walk away without feeling like the sole villain. He got more than he bargained for. He admitted to falling for Marissa. Said he had not meant to. Said she listened. Said she made him feel like someone again. The same reasons I had for Julian, like we were reading from the same sad script. I told him I had fallen for someone too. I did not tell him that the someone was his hired test. He did not ask. That omission said everything. We signed separation documents. Talked about selling the flat. Talked about who got what. It was transactional and numb. We did not talk about love. It felt irrelevant. As for Julian, I did something that surprised even me. I did not run to him. I did not cut him off. I took space. Real space. Weeks where I did not go to the lounge. Where I walked by other bars that smelled like rum and smoke and kept moving. Where I woke up alone and let the loneliness sit with me instead of drowning it in neon. He sent messages. Short ones. No pressure. He said he was sorry. He said he missed me. He said he would be at the piano if I ever wanted to talk. I did not respond. Not because I wanted to punish him. But because for the first time in a long time I was trying to listen to myself. Not my hunger. Not my hurt. Myself. Months later, on a soft summer night, I walked past the Avalon. I heard music. Different from before. Curiosity tugged. I went in. The Red Room glowed, full but not crowded. The chandeliers shone. The saxophone sign burned. The air was still smoky, still warm. Julian was on stage. He saw me. His hands faltered for half a beat. Then he kept playing. When his set ended, he came down slowly. He did not rush. He did not invade my space. He stopped at a respectful distance and asked how I had been. He asked like he really wanted to know. I told him the truth. That I was still angry. That I still cared. That I did not trust myself enough yet to be anything with him. He nodded. He said that was fair. Then he said something that landed differently than all his earlier declarations. He said that whatever version of us might exist in the future, he wanted it to be built without anyone else's money involved. Without assignments. Without surveillance. Without tests. He said that if that meant there was no future us at all, he would accept it. Because the last thing he wanted was to be another trap in a life where I had just learned to walk freely. I believed him. But belief was not enough. Not yet. I left that night without kissing him. Without making promises. Without breaking any. And it was the cleanest thing I had done in a year. Now, when I think about the Red Room, I do not only see betrayal. I see a place where I finally watched my life from the outside long enough to understand that I had been complicit in my own erasure. Ethan betrayed me. I betrayed him. Julian betrayed us both. But I betrayed myself first. By staying silent. By settling. By accepting half versions of love. I do not know if I will ever build anything with Julian outside that lounge. Maybe we will try. Maybe we will meet one day in a cafe with bad lighting and cheap chairs and see if anything between us survives outside neon. Maybe we will not. What I do know is that I will never again hand someone else the power to test my heart for me. If I am going to break my own life apart, it will be on my terms. In the clear light. Not the warm, forgiving haze of a room designed to make everything look better than it is. That is my confession. Not that I cheated in a Havana-style jazz bar. But that I let myself be written into someone else's experiment. And then, finally, I chose to step off the stage. And start living off script.